Hey everyone, this is Steve Wright from SCDLifestyle.com, and you're listening to the SCD Lifestyle Solution Podcast number 6. Great. So tonight on the phone we got my partner again, Jordan Reesner, and we're welcoming back to the show Matt Robinson from NaturalDigestiveHealing.com. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing well.
I'm doing excellent.
Cool. Great. Well, before we get started, I just want to throw out a little nugget out there for the people listening. We want to appeal to you that if you are using iTunes to listen to this, to please rate our sweet little podcast. And if it's not so sweet, feel free to let us know there as well. But the more you rate our podcast, the more people are going to listen to it, as well as it moves up in the rankings on iTunes. So please, if you're listening and you're using iTunes, go in there and give us a rating. Okay, great. I guess this week we're just going to kind of try to build off of where we left off the last time Matt was on the show, and we're kind of in maybe what you would call phase 1, phase 2 foods, or somewhere like 45 to 60 days into the diet, and we kind of talked about how we were tracking what was happening and how and when we started seeing improvements while on the diet. So I guess what I'm going to challenge myself and the other two guys on the phone is to try to get back into that mindset that we were, maybe say 2 months into the diet or so. And we're going to try to walk you guys kind of through some things that we were dealing with at that point and hopefully help you out. So I think, because I think Matt did this better than anybody that I know of ever. I want to go to him first, and Matt, I want to just kind of, can you reiterate for the listeners, how were you tracking your symptoms at this point in the diet? Were you using a journal? Were you using Elaine's chart or something like that?
Yeah, so my big geek flag goes off for everybody listening. Beep, 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 geek. I made an Access database, and I tracked the day. I made a mental and bowel well-being index, and I tracked my bowel movement times, a stool quality, whether I kept the SCD that day or not, i.e. if I made a mistake, I didn't get to check that box. Tracked all my supplements, what time I took, and then I had everything I ate, so I had a diet tracker, and then any comments I needed to make. So that's what I did on a daily basis. Since I sit at a computer for work, I just kept it open and wrote that stuff down whenever I put something in my mouth or put something in the toilet. So
very cool. Did you, like, how long did that take you every day, maybe? Like, as you filled it in throughout the day, would you say, if you estimated?
5 minutes tops.
5 minutes? Okay. So
yeah.
It wasn't a huge investment.
It wasn't. Once I got it created, if I made a lot of notes, if I had a lot of different foods, it might take me 10 minutes at the most. So
perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds super sweet, and I don't think I have your programming skills, but that would be sweet.
It was easy. You can do anything from a piece of paper and a notebook to Excel to Access, whatever you guys want. Fit day,
Yeah, and I heard something I wanna pull out of that. Where you listed off a lot of things, like all those things. Definitely track them. If you're listening out there, I think they're great. But one thing that struck out that I don't think I didn't track and I should have tracked was, you said, was I SCD legal or not? And the reason why I want to pull that out and just talk at that for a second is because you don't have to do this in the Access database like we said, but you could print off a calendar, just for this month and put it on your fridge, and something that's going to give you quick feedback and it's going to help with the motivation is just X off the day in green, or put a green smiley face on there saying, yes, I was SCD legal today. And I think that's a quick tip that I just want to throw out there, that it builds positive reinforcement, and it's a quick, even on a down day, it's cool to make a green smiley face.
And it's a great way to do that, because if you're having problems, then you can look back and say, oh crap, I had 3, 4, 5 days in the last 2 weeks where I made an SCD faux pas. No wonder I'm having problems. So it's easy to go back that way. And sometimes I had to go back after I figured out I ate something wrong a week later and uncheck the box and say, oh, oops.
Hey, I want to throw out one of my favorite SCD tips that's in our book that I use, and I talked Steve into using it when he was on the diet too, is on the back of my hand, I wrote down how many days I had been on the SCD diet, and so every day that number got bigger, and that was such a motivation for me because when I was having a bad day, and I was thinking about cheating, I was thinking about, I don't want to do this anymore, I can't do this, I don't have time. I'd look down and that number would keep getting bigger, you know, it'd say 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. And as that number grew and grew, I actually did it all the way through 365, the first year I was on the diet. And it made a huge difference for me mentally, and it was a great little 5-second thing I did every morning, just wrote that number in the same place every day, and it really, really helped me. So definitely wanted to throw that out there. That was a really cool thing that I did too that helped me mentally.
Yeah, I agree. I use the same technique. Jordan convinced me to do it, and it's a sweet technique for sticking to anything. So I highly recommend it as well. I wanted to... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so the overall point there is, one, to track your symptoms and what's going in your mouth and coming out of your body so that you can see retrospectively, positive or negative, and then find out something like Jordan did, something that motivates you, that keeps you going.
Yeah, and to build off that, and I'm not sure if we even talked about doing this, but I think it's a great idea. If Matt, could you, because I mean we've been kind of dancing around this issue a little bit lately, but I mean the fact of the matter is that for everyone who does the diet, it's almost like their own trial and error experiment to a degree, and you're gonna have missteps that you didn't plan on, and it's not even your fault sometimes, but you're going to need to have a record to look at to help you figure out how to, get back on the right path. So, Matt, could you kind of talk to us about how do you find out what happens if you start feeling bad? Like, what was your thought process when you look back at your journal?
Well, so I told you guys in the last couple of podcasts that I routinely introduced more than one food at a time, which was a mistake for me, but I couldn't help it. It was one way of mentally I couldn't take all the stuff going on with my body and my life and not have a little bit of pleasure. So I endured some of the pain in order so that I could have the pleasure of adding a few foods here and there. So what I did was I tracked my diet really closely, everything that went in my mouth. I kept comments on how I was feeling. If I thought a food might have bothered me, so for example, I look back at my database, and the stool quality, 5 was the most disease activity you could figure out. It was totally watery, explosive nastiness, and 1 was, praise the Lord, I'm healed. So I would rate my stool quality every time I went to the bathroom between 5 being the worst and 1 being the best, and I would look through that and look through how many times I went for a day, and if I had a sharp increase over probably 2 days and a decrease in stool quality, then I looked back at my diet and said, what did I eat here? And was something new? And if not, did I eat something in massive quantity? Because I do have an addictive personality, and sometimes I'll eat an entire pan of peanut butter brownies, and it'll throw me into cold sweats. So, and that happened. I ate an entire jar of peanut butter at work once, and I started having convulsions and shaking and had nasty, crazy symptoms go on for 3 days straight. I had to stay home from work.
Wow.
So, yeah, not many people can eat an entire jar of peanut butter in one sitting, but I did. So that's what I would do. I would go look at my journal and say, how many times did I go to the bathroom? What was the stool quality like? It's getting worse. What did I eat? And look back at my journal. And if nothing, sometimes I couldn't figure it out. And I would guess. Like here I'm looking at one that says flag, guacamole or a little bit of red wine. And I had question marks. So I took them both out. And for a week until things got better. And then I tried one at a time. So what about you guys? What did you do?
I did kind of the same thing. Just to step back for a second, the way I tracked my journal was, I think I talked about this before, but I kept a 5x7 note card in my back pocket, and I would write on it at each meal, kind of how I felt, what I had, the amounts, and then I would enter it into a just like a diary bound journal at the end of the day, and I would track basically all the same things that Matt talked about. However, I went with like the Bristol stool chart, and I used those numbers, and I tracked a lot of mental symptoms such as like how was my energy, how was my mood, how was my clarity, was I motivated that day, was I, you know, what was going on there, and for me, um, I would basically, as if I was going along, I think the same thing. I tried to add foods one at a time, so I kind of had a knowing right away. If I had a bad reaction right away, it was usually, pretty obvious because in the last 3 days, the only thing that had changed was that one thing. So it made it really easy for me to step back and just take that out for 3 to 4 days and see if it got better. But what I didn't realize, and it took me a while to figure out sometimes, is that moderation piece that you talked about, Matt. And so I was only laughing at your peanut butter story because that started happening to me with almond butter and yogurt actually a little bit and honey. And what I didn't put pieces together is I got so good so fast that I really just I was just cruising at 100 miles an hour forward. I was loving it, and so I just started mowing on almond butter and mowing on those different things that are kind of, they shouldn't be the core of your diet. And I was slowly over a couple weeks time making them the core of my diet. The core of my diet was these fringe ideas like a bunch of pear sauce with a bunch of honey with a bunch of cinnamon, and then a whole bunch of almond butter and these types of things. And so what I didn't realize was all of a sudden I gradually got worse for a while, and it took me looking back like 2 weeks to realize, wow, all of my foods lately are no longer hardly any meats and veggies. They're like all these other foods. And so that was kind of an interesting, I guess, a thing that I noticed.
Well, I think for me, it's interesting to listen to both your stories because I had a different approach during that time period on the diet because I had such an insidious fear of feeling bad. I had an insidious fear of symptoms. I had such a paranoia and fear about my diarrhea that once I start getting better, I just had this horrible complacency where I would have like, I don't know, maybe I think it was like butternut squash and some other staple foods that like pear sauce and then the heavy meats and a couple of different veggies. I think I had zucchini and cucumber going, and those were all really good, and I had this good solid foundation, and I felt amazing. And so I didn't advance at all. I was just like, I don't care, I want to feel good. And I just kept eating the same thing over and over and over again for like 3 or 4 weeks, I think. And I just had this horrible, gripping, paralyzing fear that my symptoms were going to come back. And I was so scared I would literally have anxiety about introducing a new food. And I think a lot of the times I almost thought that some of my reaction to the foods was actually just from anxiety, not even the food itself. It was pretty powerful, and I didn't necessarily understand it at the time, but looking back on it now, it's really powerful for me to think about it because it's a lot different than you guys in the sense that I had such a fear of getting diarrhea and having more symptoms that nothing was worth risking that, not binging on anything, not anything at that point. And so, I worked through a lot of that fear as I've progressed on the diet and have a bigger foundation of foods, and I still struggle with it, but I did get to a point, after being on the diet for a year where I started getting into moderation problems, which I've talked about before with fruit, and I've started eating way too much fruit, but back then, I was just eating a little bit of everything that I knew was okay because I was so scared to advance. And, I was tracking everything to a T on it. I just had a simple Excel spreadsheet. It had Sunday through Saturday, at the top. And then it had every hour of the day in a box along the left side. So it was 8 a.m. through, midnight, basically. And then in each box I would just put, if I ate something, I'd put what I ate. If I had a bowel movement, I'd put what it was like. If it was, I'd rate the urgency on a scale of 1 to 10 because that was really important to me. And then I would just say like loose or well-formed or, whatever. And then at the end of the day, or maybe 2 or 3 times a day, I'd kind of make a note of my mood. But it was just simple spreadsheet with boxes, and just for every block of hour of the day, and that's where I'd put my information in. And I tracked that really, really, really particularly with a fine-tooth comb. And that's how I got to the point where I was feeling really good. And then I kept tracking, but it was the same foods every day. I just kept eating the same things. And I had to get past that fear and anxiety about actually introducing a new food in order to advance on a diet. So it was a little bit different, but I think that, it's an interesting paradox looking at all three of our situations in that respect.
I think that's really interesting because I think I was the opposite in that I would have a couple of really good days in the beginning and the second month. I said earlier that it took me a lot longer to start feeling better than it did for you guys. So in the second month, I was still going 4 times a day, but that was a huge improvement. So I'd have a really good day, 3, 4 bowel movements with sort of form, and then I'd be like, woo, I need to add something new. I need to get into some, I don't know, whatever it was. I need some wine. I need some this. And I would indulge and regret it. So I think I was too eager to add foods. So it's interesting that we're sort of polar opposites, and I would encourage people not to be like I was and be a little more cautious, but maybe have a little more freedom in adding foods than what you said, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was gripped with anxiety. It was horrible. Horrible. It was like being in a anxiety and fear prison. I just felt like I was too scared. And I wasn't cured at that point, but I was so much better than I was, a month before I started the diet that I was so scared to lose that. So I think it wasn't healthy what I was doing, and it probably isn't healthy to binge either and introduce things too quickly either. And I did binge later, so I mean, I've had that experience too, but I think that there's a happy medium in there where it's exciting to introduce new foods. If you're feeling good, there's a little bit of fear there, but that's part of the excitement. And you just keep, you're going to have setbacks. Whether or not you do it like you did or whether or not you do it like I did, I still had setbacks. Even though I was eating the same foods, I would still have a couple of days where I don't know, I just would have a setback, a little bacteria burp or something. I don't know. It was just, I'd had some diarrhea, and it wasn't explainable. I was tracking everything and I couldn't explain it. So it could have been lack of sleep, could have been hormones, could have been something crazy, I don't know. But I still had setbacks, and that, so you're going to have them either way. So you might as well just try to have a steady pace, like the turtle, like the hare and the turtle in the hare, right?
Yeah.
Tortoise in the hare.
Sorry.
No, yeah, I was just going to say.
You're up. Go for it.
Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors.
All right, rock, I win. No, I was just going to say, yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I actually was going to try to steal the limelight there because I wanted to force Jordan to go a little bit farther in depth on something he just touched really quickly there. But so all three of us definitely had setbacks. We all have moments in our journals where things didn't go as planned, either because we introduced a lot of foods at once or for reasons that I have no explanation in my journal, but I felt like crap that day. So what I wanted Jordan to, and I think we should all kind of get into this emotional mindset real quick, is Jordan, what were you feeling and how did you deal with those days where, you were coasting along, you were feeling so good, you were locked into your foods, and then bam, you just had diarrhea 5 times the next day. Like how did you get through those days? What was going on?
Well, my engineering mind would take over, and I would just go obsessively into problem solving. I would dive through my journal and just try to figure out what was it, and I could never explain it. I'd just say, well, maybe it was this, and in the end, I'd never change anything because I had no idea what it was, and and emotionally, it would just crush me because I'd be on such a high, and I didn't really change anything, and I'd have this weird little setback, and for those 2 days or 3 days or whatever, I would be miserable and I would just want to crawl in a hole and die because it was so defeating and emotionally crushing for me to not be able to explain it. Being an engineer, I have to be able to explain why things happen, and I couldn't. So that was really hard for me, and I think you helped me a lot through a lot of those times just to remind me that you have to look at, are you on an upswing overall? How were you a week ago? You're going to have high and low points along the way, but how are you looking overall from a month ago, from 2 months ago, from 3 months ago? Are you getting better overall at a zoomed out view? And that's really the only thing that got me through those days, is to think about, okay, I'm on day 62, and I need to look back and see how was I feeling a month ago, and it's like, wow, I could only hold a poop for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, a month ago, and now it's kind of okay, and I'm only going twice a day, and that's pretty cool. I'm actually doing better than I was a month ago, and even though I'm having a little bit of a low day today, I know that tomorrow and the next day are probably going to get better, and I just have to push through, and I'm going to be all right. And there's low points and high points, and you have to just try to stay neutral and not get too high on the high days and not get too low on the low days. And that's what I really had to struggle and learn how to do, and I still struggle with it sometimes, to just say, okay, I'm having a high day, but I know that it's probably going to swing back down, but that's okay. I'm going to be okay with that. And I know I'm probably going to have a low day maybe next week, and that's okay. I might have a little bit of gas for no reason that maybe I can't explain. And, I got so hung up on the diet and all the stuff that we've learned since then. There's a lot of other things that can factor into how you're feeling, like your sleep and your hormones, and there's just this whole other laundry list of things that could be causing these symptoms, and you can't always be pointing at a food, and it's just not mentally healthy. I've been through it. It'll crush you, and it'll make more anxiety and fear than you can imagine. So for me, it was just trying to learn how to just, how am I doing over time? Am I getting better over longer periods of time? Yes. Okay, I'm having a low day. No big deal. I'm just going to ride it out, just like a wave. It's going to crash on the shore, and I'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Matt, what about you? What happened to you? You'd be in those great highs. You'd add a bunch of food, and then obviously you'd pay the price. So what would go through your mind in those down days, and how were you approaching it?
I would encourage people to have good community around them and to utilize that community, to share your feelings. It's a big revelation for a lot of dudes, a lot of guys out there. Share your feelings. And it can alleviate your physical symptoms. Jordan alluded to that. I'm looking at August 9th through August 12th in my journal of 2009. I went 2 times a day for 4 days straight. And then, boom, 4, 5, blood, mucus, felt tired, had to stay home from work, and I couldn't explain it. And it was terrible. And my experience was the same as Jordan's. I was distraught. I considered Valium and antidepressants and all these other things. I was like, just somebody let me out of this box, out of this hole that I've dug myself into. What did I eat? Can't figure it out. And the only way that I can get through those things, there's 2 ways. First is that I have good community around me. I leaned on my wife, and she was a good friend. So let somebody know what you're doing. If you're single, let somebody know what you're doing, and ask somebody to sort of partner with you emotionally and to keep you accountable for those ups and downs that Jordan talked about. And the second was, I believe in God, so I prayed a lot, and that was very cathartic. So that's how I handled it. But my ups and downs were the same as Jordan's. And I'm 16 months into the diet, and I still have mishaps that I can't explain. Days where my diarrhea comes back, and it's unexplainable. It's not nearly as bad as it was a year ago, but I find I get just as upset over now one loose stool compared to back then 5 diarrheas was great. So it's good to look back in your tracking journal, whatever system you look at, take a 50,000 foot view, take a deep breath, and remember that you are getting better. And then talk with somebody about it. So that's how I handled it, and I wouldn't say that I handled it, but that's how I got through it.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's awesome.
Handling it makes it sound like I was in more control than I actually was.
Yeah, my guess is that all three of us, I know I was, and I know Jordan's story, so I know he was, but I was the same thing. When it was down, and I was unhappy. I was not only was I feeling like crap, but I was making everyone else in my life very crappy as well, because I couldn't understand how I could feel so good one day and then feel so bad the next day.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There was a radical shift in my perception that happened last fall sometime, about 5 months into the diet, where I realized that this disease, or whatever you want to call it, condition, I rather call it a condition, is not me. It doesn't define me. It's not who I am. It's a part of me right now, but it doesn't control me, and it doesn't define me. And when I was able to say that, to say I am Matt Robinson with or without colitis, I am not colitis, I am not the SCD diet, I am not the foods I eat, I'm much more than that. And that was a big mental shift for me. I don't know, I wish I could explain to people how to make that shift. It just sort of happened. But when you do, I found a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah, wow, that is powerful, and I think that's huge. I don't know if people will know how huge that is, but I had a similar shift, and actually my shift came from the fact that I was going through testing to try to figure out what was wrong with me, and I still have been going through testing, ever since I started the diet. And about 6 weeks into the diet, I finally got my initial test results on whether I had celiac disease back. And when they came back negative, I was actually more upset because I had to listen to the IBS talk again and again. And all they would tell me the exact same things that I'd been hearing for years. And so I was somehow in this awkward negative state where I was almost wishing that they could have just rubber stamped me with a label, celiac. And it took me reflecting through that and really getting into this diet. And I think it took some more months, maybe 6 or 7 months for me to get some more tests back negative, and then finally realize that it actually doesn't really matter what I have, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing. All that matters is how I'm feeling and what I'm accomplishing. So if I'm feeling good and I'm accomplishing what I want to, then I don't even care to tell anybody that I'm on a special diet, or I don't even want to tell anybody that I have IBS. If they're going to ask and pry, I'll give them that. But I definitely understand what you're talking about, Matt, and I think that's huge because you're able to kind of, I think it's part of taking that 50,000 foot view where you're able to step back a sec and kind of look at it and just be like, oh, wait, this diet, has its ups and downs, this disease has its ups and downs, but I'm doing all right, and this is a good step.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to talk a bit for a second. Wow, what a tangent! But getting back, when I was on a down days, and I think Matt, you mentioned it for a bit, but I found it really easy to rip through my journal and just be flabbergasted, not understanding, and then just go to the internet and just Google everything I could to try to find like a shiny object or an answer to my pain at that point. And I think that was a big downfall for me that I spent a lot of time on, was I just wasted a lot of time doing what if, and it was almost like the reverse anxiety that Jordan had. I spent all my anxiety and all my time trying to figure this out. I couldn't understand why I was feeling so bad after feeling so good. And it actually, I was able to help Jordan, but I think it took me going through a lot of these ups and downs where I was able to kind of develop this idea where I was like, whoa, every 7 days, like every Sunday I started doing it, I need to look at what happened throughout that week and figure out, this is a, I don't know if, Matt, if you want to make that geek noise again, I don't know what it was, but I was actually trying to figure out like what the slope of my healing line was. So was I on a gradual up track or was I on a gradual down track? If I kind of looked at all my symptoms and my ratings, and if there was, spikes, sure, but I would try to draw a line in between them, tie them all together, and then also look at that month and see, was I actually still doing okay, even though today I thought, the world was crumbling before my feet and I would just want to crawl in a hole and not wake up tomorrow? And to realize that, I'm not saying I realized it right away. It probably was over 20 times of these ups and down days before I finally got to the point where I was like, man, wait a second. When I'm down, it sucks. And I'm not going to make, any ifs, ands, or buts about how bad I feel, but it's not going to be there tomorrow, or it's not going to be there in 3 days from now, because I know where I was and I know where I'm headed, and so I don't have to feel like this is the end of the world, and I don't have to necessarily either find an answer for what I feel like today, because I know I'm taking the right steps to get back to where I was.
Right, and there's a certain tension that you have to hold with. You can't control all the variables. You can't control everything. So you do the best you can, just like you said. You need to be confident that you're taking all the steps you can, and then from there, you have to reconcile with what's going on.
Yeah, I think I got to add to that, Steve. I think shiny objects on Google really took me on some tangents too, and those low days make it real easy. And I think I've self-diagnosed myself with about 50 different things on 50 different low days, from adrenal fatigue to hyperthyroid to hypothyroid to Hashimoto's to ammonia toxicity to whatever. I've Googled everything and blamed my low day on that, and then I was okay the next day, and I forgot that I had that anymore. So it'll suck you in. Don't let it get you.
Yeah, and if it does suck you in, and you're on there Googling and you happen to remember this podcast, just be like, oh right, that's what's happening right now, and then it'll be okay. I think one thing that I just want to throw out there to kind of tie the big tangents we just kind of went on and what we just talked about was just remember that we still have ups and downs. I still have these, Matt still has these, Jordan still has these, but like I was talking about, the slope of the path you're on is what's important. Our down days now might be a half loose stool and some gas, or some weird stomach noise, or just whatever. You just ate a bunch of one food and you just didn't feel right. And that still provides us with, really what we would consider perfect days and less than perfect days. And the funny thing is my less than perfect day right now, while even though I can tell you about all these things that I do to minimize it, I still get angry that I can't feel 100% all the time. Even though my less than perfect day, a year ago was, up all night crapping my brains out. And they don't correlate at all. There's no tie between them. My less than perfect day right now is amazing still. But when I'm in that less than perfect day, if I don't catch myself as it's happening, it can spiral out of control really, really fast. So I hope that it sticks in your head to kind of be self-aware and be present in those days, and just as much as you can try to take a step back and almost step out of your body and look at yourself and just realize that it's going to be okay. As we get and continue talking about what we were dealing with in the middle part of our roads in the diet, Jordan, I don't think, or I think you dealt with this later on, but how did you guys deal with, like, say, food cravings? Like, I know that coming from like a down day or even a high day, I would sometimes just, crave some honey or crave a big yogurt smoothie with a bunch of fruit. Does either one of you guys want to give that a go and kind of talk about your craving experiences and how you were able to beat them?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, those down days make it real easy to say, well, I already feel like crap, so what difference does it make if I just take this bottle of honey and throw it back and suck down half of it right now? What difference does it make? I'm already feeling crappy. And it's really easy to fall into that pattern, and I want to just add that you don't have to do that. And if you don't do that, you'll probably feel better quicker in reality, but it's a really, really hard emotional state to fight, because in that moment, all you can think about is some kind of quick fix, some kind of quick pick-me-up, some kind of quick instant thing that's going to take you away from that horrible down place that you're in that day. And a lot of times it's really easy to reach for that bottle of honey or even reach for a cheat. But for me, I know honey was the big thing initially, and it's real easy to do that. So to fight those, the biggest thing for me is I'd have to trick myself. Like, I have an urge to do something. I'm gonna grab this honey and chug it. Nope, I'm gonna chug a glass of water instead. And then I'll just chug this giant glass of water till my stomach hurts because it's so full of water that I'm just miserable from that, and I know that I'm going to be all right and I didn't do anything stupid, and I can go feel sorry for myself for being really full of water. So that's one trick that I used, was to just chug a ridiculous amount of water instead, and that would feed that impulse, but it wouldn't necessarily punish me as badly. And then another thing that I would do is I would try to find another way to channel that energy. So if I was feeling really bad and I had this impulse like, oh, I have to eat something, I have to do something, I have all this energy, I need a quick fix, I'd say, well, no, I'm going to do 10 push-ups, and I'd just get right down on the kitchen floor right in front of the fridge, and I would do 10 push-ups, and then I'd fall down exhausted because I had just been on the diet and I really didn't have a lot of energy at that time. So just changing my state. So chugging a glass of water, doing a sit-up, running in place for 5 seconds, or just change your state. Take your mind out of that emotional state. Try to do something physical. Change your state. Go from emotional to physical, or maybe meditate, or do something like that, or read, or throw on your favorite movie. But you need to change your state. That's my best tip for how I dealt with cravings on low days.
Awesome, Matt. What about you? How'd you handle it?
Well, the first 4 or 5 months on the diet, I was a bad example because I indulged a lot. I didn't know that that honey and fruit was a lot of my problem. I didn't eat like pounds and pounds of it, but if I wanted a smoothie, I made a smoothie, and I would drink like a liter of smoothie, and it made me problem. But once I learned that, I still had serious sugar cravings, and I had serious food jealousy. So first, the food cravings I dealt with by eating more of what was legal. I'd have a second hamburger. I'd talk to my wife. Actually, I would say out loud, all I want to do right now is eat a liter of smoothie. And she'd say, that's so gross. And I'm like, you're right. What else can we do? And we'd get up and do something else. But to verbalize it it made the thing real, and then I could see it for what it really was. But the food jealousy I dealt with a lot with, because my family doesn't eat SCD, and neither did anybody I was going out to eat with or whatever. And in the first 4 months especially, to deal with that food jealousy was rough, and I needed help. So I would verbalize it again and be like, all I want is some of that ice cream. You guys either don't eat it around me or let's do something different. Because I was starting to physically get angry. I would get angry that I have to do this stupid freaking diet. I have to get angry that people were drinking beer and eating ice cream, and why the hell can't I have any fun in life, and all these other things that are just a downward spiral that leads to depression. And those thoughts aren't true. You know, in actuality, I'm not on medicine anymore. I'm not in a hospital. You know, I need to step back and take a new perspective. Jordan said, change your state. I had to change my perspective. And if that meant getting up during dessert at a big household of friends while everybody was eating, then I got up and I went outside. And I sat in the cold in a t-shirt until I was shivering, or something that would jolt my perspective back into what was going on for real. And what was going on for real was that I was getting better. And once I gained that perspective again, I could go back inside, and people, my good friends, would be like, dude, I'm so sorry we ate that in front of you. And sometimes I'd be like, yeah, you should be, because you saw that I was jealous, you saw that I was having a problem, and you guys didn't do anything about it. And or on my good days, I would say, dude, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It just takes me a little while to deal with the changes that are going on in my life. So changing my perspective is what helped me most during those times.
Yeah, that's awesome, Matt. To tie that together, I'm going to build off of both years. I've used this in the past. However, I did not use it in the diet per se when I was in the 3 to 6 month window. But so another way to I guess to back up, to change your state, I think what Jordan is talking about there is basically the idea that you could be either physically active and doing something, and that's kind of like your state at that moment. You could be mentally or spiritually in thought or consumed by thought in a moment, or you can be like emotionally driven, where it's just bursting out of your brain and all of your body is in that one emotion. And so I think he was talking about jolting you from the mental, emotional area into the physical. And Matt's talking about almost redoing that mental, emotional shift. And he's actually talking about doing such a thing as making a physical change, where removing yourself from the jealous or the thing that's making you jealous, or the thing that's causing the craving is another way to deal with that. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is if you have an emotional or a mental state where you're just absolutely consumed. I used to get just consumed with sugar. It was so hard for me, and it's still hard for me, actually. I mean, I'm not going to lie. And what I've found is that say you don't have like your wife or your spouse or somebody around to verbalize, maybe your friends aren't as understanding as Matt's were, one thing you can do is write out exactly what Matt was talking about. So take a piece of paper and write down, just feverishly take all that energy and anxiety in your body and write about what it is you crave right now. And I mean, write everything. Like, I physically want to grab this bottle of honey and take one shot. And I know if I take one shot, I'm going to take 2 shots. And if I know I take 2 shots, I'm going to probably go eat that applesauce. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to drink some more honey. And it's going to make me feel great. And then blah, blah, blah. And then when you get tired and your hand starts to cramp, step back for a second and then read. You can read it out loud, or you can read it to yourself if you're alone, what you just wrote. And that's another way to kind of shift your perspective or change your state and really realize that, man, I just, I put all that energy into writing, and you're right, I don't really want to do that now. So that's just, I think, another way to kind of bring your awareness around to what's going on with your craving in that moment. And I do want to just throw in there quickly, too, that I did suffer from a lot of food jealousy as well. So, Matt, I totally feel you on that.
Yeah. That's a fantastic suggestion. In fact, I think I'm going to try that. I had a craving breakdown last night. We made almond flour ginger snaps, and I ate like 5 or 6 of them, and it gave me loose stools today. And so, and even today, I couldn't resist the craving again. So I think I'm going to try your suggestion and see what happens.
Yeah, give it a go. We'll have to see how it works out for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think let's do a little round table here. Let's wrap this up. I think next time we could definitely dive more into the food jealousy and some other things. But Jordan, let's have you started off. Sum it up, 3 to 5 minutes, kind of what we talked about tonight, and what's the one takeaway that you want somebody listening to take away from all the tangents we've been on?
Thanks, Steve. I think the one piece of wrap-up advice I would have that I learned was you're going to have ups and downs on this diet, whether you eat exactly the same thing for 30 days in a row or whether you introduce new foods. And you just need to learn to ride those emotional states like waves, know that they're going to be over eventually, and to not try to let them be too damaging while they're happening. So, like, when I didn't feel good, I would make sure that I would tell my wife. I'd say, I'm not feeling good today, and I just wanted to communicate that to you. And I do some things, like I tell myself, okay, I don't feel good today. I know I'm in a low dip today, so I'm not going to make any big decisions. I'm not going to buy anything today. I'm not going to make any purchases that are, expensive, like a TV or something. I'm not going to make any big decisions about our finances or big decisions about work or anything. I'm just going to put it off until tomorrow when I know I'll feel better. And I just have to say, I'm just in this low state. I'm just going to be here. I'm going to ride it out till it's over. And I'm going to do everything I can to avoid damaging myself while I'm in this state. So that includes things like making big decisions, or that includes things like chugging half a bottle of honey. So there's tricks you can do. Write the days on your hands that you've been on the diet and look at it and say, I don't want to screw up the last 80 days that I've worked at this. And the other thing you can do is change your state. That's what I do. So if I'm having a craving, I'll try to do something physical, or I'll meditate, so I'm doing something more mental rather than giving into my emotional drive. But the biggest thing is just recognize you're in that state, try to be aware of it, and just ride it out. Because there's dips and there's highs, and do the same thing when you're high. And the big point is, overall, how am I doing? How am I doing from 30 days ago? How am I doing from 60 days ago? Are you doing better? Yes. Okay, you're doing the right things. Don't chase shiny objects. Just keep doing what you're doing. Ride it out.
Great. Heck yeah. I'm down with all that. Matt, what do you got?
I think I have a few things. The first thing is, remember in Elaine's book, she says the healing will take a long time, especially for those with Crohn's and colitis, with a minimum of 2 years on the diet. That her daughter was on the diet for 7 years before they took her off of it. So we're talking, you'll read people on the internet, they talk about how good you're going to feel on the diet, and it's easy to think after a month or two, I should be feeling great. Look at all these things I'm reading. Everybody's feeling great. Why the hell am I not feeling great? So relax, take a 50,000-foot view, and you can't take that step back without tracking your symptoms and your diet. So track so that when those downs come that Jordan and Steve talked about, you can take a 50,000-foot view and say, am I getting better? What's the slope, or how long is it going to take for me? Remember that it's going to take a long time, likely take a long time, if you have Crohn's and colitis especially. The other thing I would say is verbalize what you're going through. I think you heard it implicit in Jordan and Steve's comments, and explicitly for me, that when you verbalize what's in your head, it gives it form. Whether it's good or bad, you verbalize it, it gives it form. for me, it helped me to celebrate the good days, to laugh easily, and it helped me as a guy to be able to cry when I needed to. And that was a big thing for me. That was a huge step, actually. So I would encourage people that when you have good days, find a way to celebrate it. Find a way to have a little party with you and your spouse or your significant other or your friends and say, I'm having a great day, or I just had a great week. I had a great gut week, and now I want to celebrate. So find a few ways that won't make you more sick, but that you can celebrate those things, and that'll help you along the way.
Yeah, definitely verbalizing it is a huge key, not only to help yourself realize what you're feeling, but like Jordan said, to help other people around you understand what's happening to you and how you're feeling. And I definitely want to echo what Matt was saying about looking to other people, looking to our stories and saying, well, I'm not feeling what they were feeling at that point in time. Everyone is unique. Everyone has their own healing path, and based on lots of choices and lots of stuff outside of your control, your story is going to be different from our stories. So please don't, as much as you can, I know it's almost impossible, try not to judge your experience on the diet versus our experience on the diet, and try to get in those downward spirals where you're thinking you should be at a different point and you're not. I guess for me to wrap up kind of what we've been talking about, to kind of synthesize it, is the reason why we journaled and what our journals allowed us to do was so much more than just writing on a piece of paper a number 5 on the Bristol stool chart. It was a way for us to mentally talk about what the diet was doing to us, how it was changing us. It was a way to record how bad we felt in the beginning as well as how good we feel now and reflect on that. It's also a tool to troubleshoot in the short term what's happening, and possibly in the long term if a gradual shift is taking place and you maybe just wake up one day and you're like, I don't feel like I want to feel. So I just want to try to drive a nail into that dead horse and say, use a journal, do it however you like. You've heard 3 different ways, and I'm sure there's about 20 other ways that it can be accomplished. But it is such a great tool. And I guess the last thing that I just this is something I tell Jordan all the time, but I try to think about the diet and my experience on the diet as kind of like baseball. And I'm a huge baseball guy, and I'm a little unhappy for the Giants to win it last night, but my team was the Texas Rangers, but hey, congrats to the Giants. But Yogi Berra said, 90% of the game is half mental. And I really think, kind of what Yogi was talking about and what a lot of baseball coaches have talked to me about is baseball is a long season. SCD is a long investment. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, you're going to have swings of good, you're going to have swings of bad. And in baseball, they teach you to never celebrate your highest highs and never really, get down on your downest days, because, the next day you're going to have to play another game. And that's the same thing with the SCD diet. Tomorrow's a new day, the next day's a new day, and you're going to have new things to deal with. So just try to stay in that even keel as much as possible, and know that, the advice that we're sharing with you is stuff that's taken us a long way to get here. We've done a lot of reflecting, a lot of studying, and we weren't just, innately born with this ideas about how to do the diet. And with that, I just want to say that that's one of the reasons why I want to plug our book right now, because we do have a whole chapter in there that really talks about a lot of these things that we dealt with, and tips and tricks like we shared with you guys tonight on how to get through those and how to deal with them. And also make sure you go over and check out Matt's blog at naturaldigestivehealing.com/blog, and definitely go check out the series he just posted from the Perfect Health Diet. It's a great resource and a great website. So thanks for listening, guys. This has been the SCD Lifestyle Podcast number 6.